Hi guys, Nada here, and today I'm going to review yet another super lightweight gaming mouse that I have right here. Now this is Sharkoon Light2 200. Now I know it's a bit of a silly name. I actually thought that it was Light Squared 200, but it's not. It's actually Light2 200. And even though I think they should have had another internal meeting before actually going with this name, it is just a name. It means absolutely nothing. What I do want to talk about is the brand itself. So many people, when they hear Sharkoon, they think it's a cheap product of low quality, and that is actually wrong, because in the last couple of years, Sharkoon has been working really hard to get away from that reputation, and that is not easy. But I have to say that in the last few years, many cases that we reviewed from Sharkoon were actually quite good and quite affordable, with a bunch of RGB fans in them, for example. And if you look at gaming chairs, their chairs are just the same as any other gaming chair from other brands, but for a much lower price. So before running and rushing and sticking a label to a product because it's Sharkoon, don't stop and take a look at it first. You will be surprised, actually. But off to the mouse. So they released a very popular look nowadays, another perforated mouse to make it very light, because the whole trend when it comes to gaming mice changed in the last couple of years. Before, people actually preferred heavy mice and even put more weights to make it even more heavy, but nowadays people usually opt for a very light mouse, especially if they play a lot of FPS games, because light mice will make your hand move faster, you will be more accurate in games, and your hand and wrist will be less tired. That is it. It has some features like RGB to, attract you a bit more to it, and it's very affordable. So it costs 50 euros here in the Netherlands, which is just under the MM711 from Cooler Master that I reviewed a few days ago, and just a bit under the glorious Model D that was released a few days ago as well. Unfortunately, I don't have that one. So let's see how it performs, let's see how it does, how it compares to the MM711, for example, and is it worth your investment? Let's go. This video is brought to you by ASUS and their ROG Scar 3 gaming laptop. The Scar 3 comes with a 6-core Intel Core i7 CPU, a proper RTX 2070 graphics card, and a stunning 240Hz IPS panel, giving you that fantastic gaming experience. And then all that at a reasonable price. Check it out using the links in the description below. Sharkoon wanted to make an ultralight mouse that is a bit bigger than the rest and also ergonomic. It is 120 millimeters long and 58 millimeters wide, so it's not really large. It is more medium-sized, but it is actually fairly tall, standing at 42 millimeters in height. So this makes it a palm grip mouse for smaller and medium-sized hands. As it's a bit bigger than the Cooler Master MM710 and 711, it's also a little bit heavier, making it still a very light mouse considering the size of it and the added RGB. So the shape of the mouse alone is actually not that original. It reminds me a lot of the Zoe EC mice when I look at it, and it's pretty similar to the Logitech G403. That's not a bad thing, and it's actually a very safe ergonomic shape that will actually feel good in most hands. Even though it's completely perforated design, the build quality does feel quite decent. There is a tiny bit of flex if you squeeze it hard, but not something you will notice and use. Now do note that the sides are perforated as well, something that most of the competition doesn't do. That means it feels a bit different, even though there is no lack of grip when lifting the mouse. So the buttons are nicely curved and separated from the shell, and the switches are actually very popular Omron switches with 20 million clicks. So this will feel familiar and good for most users. The scroll wheel is pretty typical for your gaming mouse. The side buttons feel nice and clicky, and they're actually in a very good position. The DPI button is pretty flat and hard to accidentally hit. A cute little extra is that you actually get a couple of DPI button options that I have right here, so you can change the look of the mouse because you get a blue and a red one, and they're also different in height as well, so you can make the button a bit higher if you prefer. Another very interesting feature is that you can actually remove the top cover, so you can just click it open like this. It has little magnets. You can clean it inside if there's any dust inside and just close it the same way. Or you actually can change the top cover into a cover that is not perforated. So if you don't mind the mouse being a bit heavier and you don't like the texture of the perforated cover, you can just put the non-perforated one. It actually changes the whole look of the mouse. It's very as well easy. So, one. I actually really like this feature. Since it's a new standard, Sharkoon also went for the PTFE feet. However, they forgot to round the edges, so it's not quite as smooth as the Cooler Master MM711, for example. The same goes for the cable of this mouse. It is a loose weave as it's popular, but it's not quite as loose as some of the better options out there, meaning it's not completely unnoticeable in use. So there is definitely some room for improvement here, but keep in mind it's still better than some of the mainstream competition. I do like that they did include an extra set of feet in case you do wear these ones out. Now onto the performance of this mouse, and honestly, sensor performance is basically a non-issue these days. Sharkoon picked a great sensor, the Pixart PMW3389, one of many top optical sensors on the market these days. It is accurate, it is fast, lift-off distance is very low, and you can't really tell the difference between this one and other top mice. The sensor, shape, and weight together really make it a very pleasant mouse to use both in daily tasks and FPS games. Now the button lag also seems to be on the same level as the Logitech G Pro Wireless, which is actually considered a good benchmark result. Software has generally been a weaker part of Sharkoon products, but the new one for the Light2 200, the name, is actually quite alright. It doesn't have Logitech or Razer style polish, but where they have massive installers, the Sharkoon one is actually less than 2 megabytes total. And while the software looks pretty basic, it offers everything most users need, like some profiles, rebinding all the buttons, selecting up to 7 DPI settings in 50 DPI increments. There's macro functionality, adjusting the lighting, and so on. So, kudos for making something small and efficient instead of unnecessary. Now, technically you could call the RGB unnecessary too, but I think it's worth a couple of extra grams to have something that just looks a bit nicer. Now, it's actually a great mouse. So they took a very safe shape, they added some really good buttons and a top sensor. They added some extras as well. So this mouse has RGB, it has extra feet, it has a replaceable cover as well as replaceable DPI buttons. But I do think they should improve on a few things to, push the competition a bit more. So this mouse currently costs 50 euros, or will cost 50 euros in February when it comes out, which is just under the glorious Model D as well as the Cooler Master MM711. But if you take Cooler Master MM710, it costs the same. It doesn't have RGB, but it actually has those perfectly rounded feet, so it glides a bit nicer, and it has a better cable. So if Sharkoon actually did a small revision of this mouse, especially when it comes to the cable and the feet, they would make this great mouse into a perfect one. And until then, what I think they could do is just knock a few euros down and, make it a great alternative for people that do want to save a few euros here and there, or just people who really like to open up their mouse and clean it inside. Now, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what do you think about this mouse and about this review. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and see you in the next one. Bye!